Hi. Well, I'm here for the fourth Flicker Street little treat. Um, I'm so glad not to be wearing a mask. In any case, last time I was talking about the 17 part backstory treatments that I was writing between late 2014 and about January 2016, and then they just dropped off. So some further context to that, like what were they about, and what did I set out to do, and did I succeed at what I set out to do? I'm not sure. Sorry about that beeping. Is there notifications? Um, Also, I segued into other things while I was doing them. In other words, I went backwards to find Flicker Street again. I went way back to the beginning, and I've already talked about all that stuff. But then concurrently in early 2015 and all through that year and into the next year, 2016, I began writing in the present day, um, and I incorporated a lot of stuff from these webcomic ideas that I discussed last time and the time before. So, austerity became my next story arc that picked up after Counterfeit Messiah took place roughly. So 2005 to 2009 complete. 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 5 full years in the story, not in our reality. It spanned the austerity arc, and I transplanted austerity into the continuity and had her similar origin to what I described last time, but she was by the people who saved her and genetically re-engineered her. They also kind of programmed her to serve them, and she became an assassin with the weapons I mentioned last time. And she killed a great deal of characters, most of them in an anonymous fashion. So for a while, no one really knew who exactly was doing this. Um, at some point, I guess I would show the reader learning before the major characters, and then they would find out and discern what was going on. But anyway, I was very happy with the way it played out. It helped me do a lot of things. It got getting back into the rhythm of the characters after having not seriously written the modern day in the story. Um, uh, Saga since 2001. So that was about 13 and a half years maybe, in which I didn't seriously sit down and get caught up in the present day stuff because Counterfeit Messiah was a sequel to the things that I was where I left off. But there was a gap in that, and of course that's also something I have to flesh out. There's a couple of years between where I left off and Counterfeit Messiah, and I've made these kind of big timelines, so I know exactly what happened. Well, not exactly, but I know the arc of it. I know the bullet points, the major incidences. Um, so this was really me getting back into the mainstream of things, so to mainstream, 2 words, of things within my own head regarding Flicker Street, and it brought me closer to the way I had been working in years past. Over the last few years, I've gotten more and more and more absorbed in those methods of creating. Um, it's one of those things that sounds corny and cliche to a lot of people, but it's absolutely true. It's writing itself. It's revealing itself to me. My best material has always revealed itself to me. The characters have woken up and told me what is happening in their lives. Not like a literal dialogue with me, but figuratively, they've been out of my head or buried, I guess, yeah, dormant, laying dormant for ages. It can be months, it could be years. And then, hey, I catch up, I learn what's been happening with them. And when I've tried too deliberately to contrive certain kinds of stories or outcomes of stories, um, it hasn't really worked out. And so I've generally uh, retconned that kind of stuff out and went for organic solutions to uh, where the stories were headed. Um, the 17-part treatment, backstory treatments, regarding them, I had to do some contriving because I had to go knowingly from point A to point B. I mean, I'm leading up to a modern day where I've spent a lot of time fleshing out the 20th century um, of Flicker Street and the very beginning of the 21st. But prior to that, I hadn't really, and really in the 20th century, really just like World War II on, and some origin bits before that. So I fleshed all of that out, and I went back even further. I created a pulp era, so to speak, 1930s to 40s, with characters who weren't powered characters, seemingly anyway, but there is an explanation for that I will eventually get to in the story as to why they have the characters that do have superior abilities and qualities to humans, but they're still not, the level of some of these characters later who came along, either in terms of power levels or uniqueness of their gifts, so to speak. Their gifts are pretty generic, like, polymath kind of Doc Savage like character called Doc Vance, otherwise known as Vance Orleson. He is, superhumanly strong. He's brilliant. He's versant in all kinds of trades and sciences and crafts. And it's a lot like Farmer's depiction of Doc Savage, or as he sometimes called him, Doc Wildman, in Doc Savage's Apocalyptic Life. Um, that was a big inspiration for me with the Vance character. Um, Originally, many years ago, I had designed this golden skinned guy with a black and gold outfit, and he was going to be called the Golden Eagle. And then I quickly dropped that. But I did keep his real identity and, made him a bit more of a formidable character and a bit less of a superhero and more kind of a like a pulp hero. So he is a genetic mutant. There are reasons why, of course, that are obvious in the story. And then his half brother is also. But then, there's characters who do have some other qualities that are pretty much just human. A common denominator factor to these characters is being descended from this race that was created, I believe, 10,000 years ago is what I have in the treatments. I've vacillated between 20,000 and 10,000, so sometimes I get confused and I have to reread it myself. It was a long time ago, and um, this race was created, two races that were in this kind of detente Cold War kind of scenario, alien races, extra dimensional. They came through in extra dimensional fashion to Earth. They made a deal, and what they generally did was they would select people and mate, and then have these offspring that were alchemically modified. And so they did this on Earth. They called a truce, who had dibs on Earth, and they created these beings that were born of each of their blood. Gradually became a race. They intermarried, of course. They were very long lived. Um, Not quite as long lived as their forebears in those two races, but still way more long lived than humans. And so, of course, in time they began breeding with humans in order to replenish their stock somewhat. And some of those people stayed within their fold, and then others went out into the world. And the father of Vance and his half brother Gerhardt, they are Gerhard, and they are um, that their father is of this race, and so he went to, you know, explore, and basically the exploration led to him hooking up with a character named Ewan Cromwell, and Cromwell has his own story of being long lived and super powered. Um, he was lived since the 1490s, and so he's he's an assassin for hire basically most of the time, but he's like a conqueror, explorer, um, brute force, a barbarian. He's um, his assassin name is Carnifex, and so Carnifex is like a whispered name, a shadowy name, and people try to enlist him. But Ewan Cromwell does come out, as Ewan Cromwell quite a number of times over the years, and he really doesn't try to disguise the fact, uh, of who he is. So, people are wondering, is he long lived? Is it his own descendant, here? And I suppose when it's fortuitous for him, he'll make up a lie to that effect. Um, but he's an outlaw. He's untouchable pretty much. And there's reasons why. We'll get into why, at least in the 20th century, he's an untouchable kind of character. I would define him as a villain. He's pretty brutal. He's a serial rapist, which is, I didn't really see him in that fashion and that term until more recently, and I realized, yeah, that's what he is. I mean, he does have women that consensually, have gotten with him, but generally he's a forceful dude and overpowers them. So he's a pretty unsavory character. Um, he's not a super intellect like some characters are. He's really more of an instinctual, uh, animalistic kind of character. But he does know how to transact in the world. He has learned every kind of criminal, uh, you know, um, enterprise possible in order to keep moving and keep being somewhat affluent enough to where he can keep moving and go from country to country and take these jobs and cover his tracks, etc., and resist the law. So he uh, he comes in with the Vance's father, Jarrison. Jarrison and Ewan make an alliance, and there's a kind of a posse of Dutch settlers and a few Hispanic gentlemen. One of whom is like their guide, Guillermo, and um, children of Ewan Cromwell, some of his bastard children that he's brought along. Um, and basically, they found the city, Hallmark, in 1887. And that's where, most of my attention in these backstories went, was from 1887 through to 1980. The dawn of 1980, mid 1980 is where I'm at on the 17th and not quite completed treatment, but it will be completed. I'll add them in, and I'm going to tally all of this together, either into one piece or a book one and book two, and place them on my website, the official Flicker Street website. Um, so you can read them. They're on the links to them. Uh, well, I copied and pasted the edited versions. See, basically, I was going through a lot then, and while I was happy in reflecting on them in 2017, 2018, I was happy with the arc of the story that I'd kind of gone through the historical aspects from 20,000 years ago, I think, or 10,000. It's probably 20. I don't know. To all the way up to 1980, and I feel like it was a good background. And but some of the writing itself is pretty weak, cliched. The phraseology. I was kind of operating on autopilot when I was writing these as kind of an escape from my surroundings, and but I wasn't completely enveloped in it like I am with it now, to where there's any kind of eloquence or really deep characterization. It's really kind of just, a Tolkien-esque kind of recounting of a saga. I'm not saying it's sword and sorcery. There's every once in a great while some of those elements in the old stuff, but I haven't even really realized that yet. I mean, I've realized it up here and in notes, but um, so anyway, I decided to re-edit them, and when I founded the Henry Covert's Flicker Street page on Facebook, that was mid 2017. So I'm up 3 years. That page has been up. I've got, I believe, almost 800 followers, and that's really cool. I appreciate everybody who's supported me and who's shown interest, and it means a lot um, to get this stuff out there after all this time. Um, but in any case, mid 17, I decided that I would go ahead and re-edit all 17 installments and put the edited versions where you could read them on that page. So the first 16 are up. It took a long time to put them up. There'd be long gaps where I wouldn't be editing a particular piece, or I'd get stuck on something and re-edit or rewrite portions of it. Um, the ones that are on that page are the definitive um, treatments for what they are. Now, I've begun writing the whole thing over again, a parallel kind of thing, which uh, will have more of the kind of style and approach that I've been taking and has come to me in the last couple of years. So I'm going to be a lot happier with that, with seeing the history of this universe told in that way. But for now, I want to keep the kind of straightforward thing. I don't plan on editing an enormous amount of detailed facts, like dates and chronologies, but um, there's going to be a lot of different approaches and fleshing out of some of these past characters who are really, they're no longer with us in the current storyline or the current phase, which began in 1987 in the story. And December 86 in real life is when I began it. And so, in any case, that's what those are. So, uh, but like I said, I was developing the austerity story, and when I went to the hospital for a good bit in early 2016, and then when I got out, I was not. I didn't go back to the treatments. I didn't continue writing on them. I only started the 17th, expanding the 17th treatment within the last year or so. Um, but those 16, I just let behind. Didn't try to. I did post them all on my original personal blog. So those are the original unedited versions, which once there's a definitive version, I will probably take those down so there's no like confusion. But my personal blog has been kind of all but abandoned, but it's what the Flicker Street thing spun out of. And basically, where I'm at with it, or where I ended up with it in 2017 was that I was going back and wrapping up the austerity story, which I'd already taken to 2019. I'd made a timeline, and I'd fleshed out a lot of scenes and events. I knew what was going to happen. Basically, a lot of characters, both recent and old and supporting, incidental, die permanently in the story. Trying to think if any of them come back in the next arc. One of them does that I know of, but it's kind of complicated to get into how. But that's something else I wanted to say, is that the death in my story is permanent, and yet there are ways to transcend death and return. It involves some heavy dark magic inherited from one of the two races the warring races that came to Earth all those years ago. And involves alchemy and involves a lot of things. And I'm just now starting to understand it. But only certain people can evoke this kind of magic, and with a K, and only certain people are can receive it. And so some of these people can return to what seemingly is a fully functional life, soul intact, but there's a lot of caveats on it. And my main storyline now, which is called Ellinger, in Ellinger, I go into all that, in detail. And that part of Ellinger is um, a sequel to a story that I did in 1987, and um, I base it on some real life people that I knew. All the characters involved with it, just about, were based on real life people that I knew, friends of mine, acquaintances. Um, and then, like I said, that guy JJ, he was kind of kibitzing me and throwing some stuff at me, and I used a little of it at the time. Well, at the time, yeah, little of it. But I've kind of dropped his contributions. Um, I'll get into that in a minute. And I had another friend named Derek who I created a character with, and that was where we launched him in there. And then after a while, Derek was like, I don't want to do this anymore. He didn't really want to be a part of Dynamite Comics, as we were still kind of tenuously calling it then. And that's cool. Really, also everyone was dropping out that I'd worked with, and the vast majority of them were people I was trying to get to do art. But, nobody was at the idea level of me and Thomas Davis, though JJ came close a few times with his world building, but I've edited, almost all of his stuff out of the DNA of it in order to be fair, because it's a scenario where, I don't want to be involved with this person for some very valid personal reasons, and he doesn't want to be involved with anything creatively with me, or anything creative, period. He and his friends tend to kind of scoff at this kind of thing. They think it's kind of petty, and I consider them kind of bourgeois, Z, and I'm, ne'er shall the twain meet, and that's kind of the way life evolves sometimes. Sometimes you work on something creative with somebody, and then when you're young and as you get older, ideologically, there's like this widening gulf between you, and you realize that the work you're doing is informed by your worldview and politics and social interactions, and you realize, and your own perceptions of justice and uh, ethics, and then you realize this other person is a polar opposite to you, diametrically opposite to you. Maybe not completely opposite, but for the most part, yes. And actually, what I've done with the sequel story to that 1987 story is, in Ellinger, I've actually incorporated in some pastiche characters that I created, that were based on some of the real people involved in that era of my life. I mean, I already have the other ones I've had for 30 some years. There were four major characters involved in this story together. Um, but there's some supporting characters I made up that I based on the kind of the people that I was discussing, JJ and his friends, and the people who, um, yeah, who really kind of looked down on all of this. And that's cool. I mean, it's cool. Yeah, I was happy with the way it started coming out, and it gave me an opportunity to bring a character back to life who had died in austerity, and um, he's kind of the tether with these four characters, and also with these other characters. And there is a bit of retribution, a bit of karmic repayment, and a lot of that is in my story. I will admit it's very cathartic, to uh, sever, to be severed from someone in reality, and to have an analog of them, and have that character die, or just be written out in some permanent or semi-permanent fashion. Um, the characters always outlast the people they're based on. I can't think of any exceptions whatsoever. Well, not really. Definitely no one from my early life, like high school and my first several jobs and things like that. There's tons of characters I based on people I knew during that period, and the characters have indeed gone on, and in some weird cases, I've had some clairvoyant kind of experiences with them. Um, to where, say, I'll create two separate characters that are based on people I know. Let's say they're a male and a female. This has happened a few times. And then the characters take on a life of their own and they drift together and they become romantically paired. And then a few weeks or months, maybe even years later, the two people that these characters were based on also become a couple. Maybe not, a permanent or a married situation, but they hook up. So, did I make that happen? Did I sense somehow that that would happen? Uh, I don't know. It's fascinating because magic is, affecting change in accordance with one's own will. I'm roughly paraphrasing Aleister Crowley's definition, and art to me is magic. And these were the kind of things that I discussed at length with my ex fiance Kelly, and that she had more insight into these aspects of my story than I did, even certainly more than anyone else I'd ever told about it. She like got it and on a level that she was in a position to tell me what it was about and what I was reflecting by being a step removed from it, but also being really in tune with the alchemical nature of creation because she's an artist and a writer herself of enormous talent. Um, so it's been interesting. I've continued in 2017, late 2017. The character Ellinger revealed himself to me. He'd had a few forebears and a few like shadowy things here and there, and he took a while to really develop. And I deliberately let him remain a mystery and an enigma and reveal himself to me over the last 3 years. And of course, that's how the storyline starts. Is he is just really a name, and the name is associated with certain activities, but no one has seen this guy that they know of. No one knows who he is or what he's capable of, what his true agenda is. Um, but between us, his agenda basically is changing the world, reversing the inequality of the power structure to where the oppressed rise and their oppressors are done away with, and they claim the world as their own. And there's a shift in human consciousness. This is what he wants to have happen. I'm not saying this has happened in my story yet, but it's really strange because when I started writing Ellinger, I started looking at these kind of things that were breaking down in society and these kind of issues. And in 2020, a lot of them have accelerated in reality to the point of my story, or even maybe beyond. I mean, I may be living a post-apocalypse before I write one. It's hard to say. It's wild, but I'm going to keep on with what I'm doing because it is a separate reality, as Steve Englehart said, phrased. So anyway, that's where the thing led over time. I'm going to go ahead and take off, but the next time I will discuss more about the Ellinger story and about my other page on Facebook and my website that I've started, an official website for Flickr Street. And I'll talk about what kind of materials in there, and I'll talk about my art and how my art kind of began flourishing again in 2017, and it helped really revivify Flickr Street, and it gave me a way to put it out into the world because I can post those treatments all day long, and people may or may not even look at them, much less read them, much less read all of them. Though a small handful of people, I will say, like Anthony Cardno and Sean Michael Vogt, have done that, and Sean Lee Levin. And I've got to say, I appreciate their diligence because there's a lot to get through. Um, but in any case, um, the art was something that people could hook to. Just to be brief, and uh, the visuals catch your eye, and I wanted to get back into my art on a high level of craft, and I wanted the characters to live and move and breathe, and their images look like they did, look real in their eyes. And, I'm not sure if I succeeded or not. Kelly always told me that I did, and that it was one of the things that she liked about me was being able to capture that kind of thing and bring these characters to life. So next time I'll talk more about that and maybe hold up a few pieces of art. Probably a lot of people who are watching this that I know on Facebook have probably seen these character portraits over and over to where they're sick of them. Like, when are you going to draw some other stuff? Um, and I have the urge all the time to do it. But I have carpal tunnel. My hands are, usually I wear a brace. My hands are, eh, you know, they're okay. I can type, but it really gets on me. I can write longhand easier than type. Drawing is too much pressure, and I don't even want to think about playing the guitar again. Well, I'd like to, but it just, I tried it once and it was just my hands completely went numb. So I'm getting treatment for it, so I'm hoping by the end of the year, anyway, if not sooner, I'll be able to, finish one or two, maybe more pieces, more portraits, but I'm not sure. But anyway, I'll get into more of that next time. I want to thank you for watching, and I appreciate everybody who's taken the time to hear me out on this. It's not always super interesting, and it definitely is, a lot of autobiographical stuff, but I'm trying to kind of show my process. And, it might not mean anything to anyone with the finished product not out yet. And I get that. But I know there are some people who are simpatico with me who some of what I'm saying will resonate on some level. And there's, a filial camaraderie among creatives of certain kinds, and it'd be great if I could, you know, catch that spark with some people. It would be nice and gratifying. I don't have to, but it would be cool. Like I said, that's how I met my ex. So I have some friends who are already along these lines of creating, and yeah, I'll get into all that next time too. So thank you so much. Take care and have a good night.